What is the best mountain in Scotland? It's safe to say my home country has its fair share of impressive summits. The country has a diverse landscape, fit to accommodate any willing hiker. Join me on this one as I attempt to narrow the list down to a top 5 and ultimately choose my favourite mountain in Scotland. Well, hello everyone. You're probably wondering why I'm in this random forest instead of out on another adventure. Well, a few weeks ago I went to the Cairngorms to film a video, and I think I mentioned at the start of it that my knee was a little bit sore. Well, it turns out climbing the second tallest mountain in the UK wasn't great for it, and when I got home it was significantly worse. So I'm giving it a few weeks just to let it heal, and I thought I'd make a video that didn't require me to hike very far. So I'm going to pick my favourite mountain in all of Scotland. Well, I'm going to try to anyway. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So I'm going to pick my top 5, and I'm going to rank each mountain out of 5 on 3 categories: accessibility, solitude, and the views on the mountain. I'll quickly say before I start that I haven't done every mountain in Scotland. I think I've done over 200, so I've got quite a lot to choose from. But if there's a mountain that's on your list and it doesn't appear on my list, then that's probably why. But yeah, I think we should just get right into it. Number 5 is Larven, located in the rough bounds of Knoydart. This is probably the hardest mountain on the list to get to, which is maybe why it's not slightly higher up. It is a 12-mile round trip with 1,050 metres of elevation from a little town called Inverry, which is pretty hard to reach in itself. You can't drive there. You need to get a boat, or you need to do the long walk in from Glenfinnan. But for me, it's one of the best mountains in Scotland. It's incredibly dramatic, and in the rough bounds of Knoydart there aren't many paths, which again makes it harder to reach, but I think that also adds a little bit of adventure to it. So I think for accessibility, I'm going to give this a 1 out of 5. Because of how hard it is to reach, I don't think you're going to see many people en route to the top of this mountain. Me and my friend did it in summer, and I don't think we saw a single person on the mountain, and you would think summer would be slightly busier. So for that reason, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 for solitude. Lastly, we've got the views on the mountain, and I mean, where do I start? You're pretty close to the coast, which I always think makes the views slightly better. You can see out to sea, you can see down to Loch Hourn, which is actually where me and my friend started from. We started from Kinlochhourn instead of Inverry. And you can also see down to Barrisdale Bay, which has a campsite and is a pretty famous spot in the Scottish Highlands. So I think for views, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. The next mountain on my list is Bidgeon Nambian in Glencoe. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but I'm just going to go with it. It's probably the most accessible mountain on this list. It's a 7-mile round trip with 1,000 metres of elevation if you start at the Three Sisters car park in Glencoe. It's probably also got the best paths of all these mountains on this list, just because Glencoe is a really popular spot, so the paths tend to be a little bit better. It's got a tiny bit of scrambling if you go via the Hidden Valley, but the Hidden Valley is something worth seeing just in itself. So I think for accessibility, I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5. Because of the amazing paths and the proximity to the road, this is going to be quite a busy area. Glencoe is probably the most touristic area in terms of scenery in Scotland, maybe behind the Isle of Skye, but I'm not too sure on that one. But yeah, it is going to be very busy. You're probably going to see quite a lot of people on the trail, but I don't think that takes away from it. But anyways, I'm going to give it a 1 out of 5 for solitude. If you can see beyond the crowds of people at the top of this mountain, it does have some amazing views. I think it's the highest in the area, which just means it's an amazing lookout point. You can see all of the other mountains in Glencoe, including the Annakeegook Ridge, which I think is the narrowest ridge on mainland Britain, which is incredible to see. It's definitely one of my favourite mountains I've ever done. The views in the Hidden Valley as well. I mean, even if you're just going up to the Hidden Valley, it's worth seeing. And I remember when I got to the top of this mountain, I just sat and watched the sunset, and it was one of the best experiences I've had in the Scottish mountains. So I think for views, I'm going to give this 4.25 out of 5. The next mountain on my list is the Saddle, located near Glen Shiel in the Western Highlands. This is maybe one on the list that you haven't heard of. It's slightly less popular. There are a couple ways you can do this mountain. We opted for the harder of the two, which is up the Forkin Ridge, which is a pretty narrow ridge. Not quite as narrow as the Anachigach, but I remember being a little bit scared at the time. It is a 7-mile round trip with 950 metres of elevation, so slightly less, and that is starting in Glen Shiel. So for that reason, because you can do it a slightly easier way and a harder way, I think I'll just have to put it through the middle and give it a 3 out of 5. Similarly with how busy it's going to be, I think it's just in the middle, to be honest. It's pretty average. It's not going to be that busy because not that many people have heard of it, but it is one of the best in the area, which does make it slightly busier. Again, the paths are really good, which is going to attract a few more people. So I think I'll give it a 3 out of 5 for Solitude. Lastly, for views, I think this area is an area that you can see the most mountains, if that makes sense. I remember being there, and because of where it's located, sort of in the centre of the mountainous region of the Highlands, it's just mountains all around you, and some pretty amazing mountains, to be honest. You can see the South Glen Shiel Ridge, which I think has 7 Munros on it, and also the view of the Forkin Ridge is just incredible. It's definitely worth going up that way if you have a good head for heights. So yeah, I think in terms of views, I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 5. The second mountain on my list is Anchellach, located near a place called Dundonald in the Northwest Highlands. This is maybe a mountain that you expected to be at the top of my list, and it's probably at the top of a lot of your lists. Let me know in the comments. I was trying to decide whether to put this or the one I decided to go for literally about 2 hours last night, and this is what I finally decided on. In terms of accessibility, I think it's 8 miles and 1100 metres of elevation if you start in Dundonald, and you do need a good head for heights. There are really airy parts of the walk, and there's a little bit of scrambling, but the worst of the scrambling is actually from the other side, so you don't need to do that if you start in Dundonald. So I think for accessibility, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. The mountain isn't too busy, not to the extent of places like Glencoe and the Isle of Skye anyways. We actually saw quite a lot of people when we did it, but we did it on one of those bluebird days. The weather was amazing, and it was also a weekend, which makes it slightly busier. The fact that there are good paths and the fact that it is quite scary, I think does attract quite a lot of people, a lot of sort of daredevil type people. So for that reason, I'm going to put it down the middle, because that could either put people off or sort of attract them. So I think I'll give it a 3 out of 5 for Solitude. Lastly, we've got the views, and I think many people would say this is the best looking mountain in Scotland, and I'm not going to argue with them, to be honest. It was very close between this and my number one, and on any other day this would be number one and my number one would be second. So yeah, it is one of the best looking mountains in Scotland, and the views from the top are also some of the best. It's close to the coast, which, like I said before, makes it better for me, and you get views towards the Fisherfield Mountains, which are some of the most remote in Scotland. It's a nice airy ridge, which also makes the views slightly better, and it's definitely one to keep for a good day. So I think I'll give the views 4.75 out of 5. Before I tell you what my favourite mountain in Scotland is, I thought I'd give you some honourable mentions. These are mountains which I love, but don't love enough to make the top 5 list. And they are Ciar Mhor on the Isle of Arran. It's actually the only mountain I'm going to talk about that isn't a Munro, but because it's slightly smaller, it's a little bit easier to get to, and it's an amazing mountain. It doesn't take anything away from it. It's a really narrow top, there isn't much room to move about, and the views are amazing because you're on a little island, Scotland in miniature, in the Isle of Arran. So yeah, that's definitely one of the honourable mentions. Another one would have to be Carmore Gerag, located in the Ben Nevis range. It's actually right next to Ben Nevis. The CMD Arret is one of the best routes to the top of a mountain. It's a nice, narrow, airy ridge, but it's not quite as hard as some of the other ridges in Scotland. And actually, now that I'm talking about it, it's one of my favourite mountain days, and I kind of wish I put it in this list, but oh well, I haven't. Another one would also be Shauna Bray, near Ullapool, which I think is one of the most remote mountains in Scotland. We didn't see a single person on the mountain. I don't think we saw anyone the entire day. We also did it in winter, which is going to make it less busy. But because of how remote that is, the views are incredible. And the last honourable mention would have to be the Anachigach Ridge. It is the narrowest ridge on mainland Britain. I think it's got 2 Munros. I'm not sure which one I would pick. They're both amazing, and it just narrowly misses out on this top 5 list. So here we go. Don't know if you can hear that. Drum roll, please. I'm about to tell you what my favourite mountain that I've done so far in Scotland is. And it is Conic Hill, located near Loch Lomond. No, it's not actually. That is a terrible joke. I hope it at least made some of you laugh. My favourite mountain actually is Liagach, located in Torridon in the Northwest Highlands. I think it's pronounced Liagach or Liach, something like that. In terms of accessibility, I think it's 8 miles and 1100 metres of elevation for the round trip, and that's to do both of them in rows, and there's also quite a bit of road walking at the end of it. But I'm not really selling it that well. It is an amazing mountain. It looks like a shark tooth. It is really, really cool. You head straight up from Torridon Road, so it is pretty steep, but the path is really good. So I think for accessibility, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. It is quite a hard mountain to reach the top of because of the scrambling. I actually found it slightly easier than some of the other ridges that I've talked about, like the Anakeagach Ridge and the Forkin Ridge. I think it's only a grade 1 scramble on Liagach, which I think is the lowest grade you can get of scrambling, so it's not too difficult. So it's going to attract sort of adrenaline type people, but also the airiness and the scrambling might put people off. But we didn't find it too busy. I think we only saw a handful of people on the mountain. So I think for solitude, again, I'll put it down the middle and give it a 3 out of 5. And lastly, we've got the views, and I think you know what's coming. It is 100% a 5 out of 5 for views. It is incredible. Torridon is probably my favourite area in Scotland, either that or the Cairngorms National Park, which there's actually no mountains on this list from that area, which maybe I need to change. But anyways, we're talking about Liagach. You can see the other mountains in Torridon, the other giants, Ben Alligin and Ben A, I think it is, which I'm yet to do both of those actually, so I'm really excited to do those. I mentioned that it looks like a big shark tooth from down below, which is just incredibly cool, and the views from the top aren't too bad either. You can see out to sea because it's pretty close to the coast, and yeah, I mean, if you've done it, you'll know. If you've seen my video, you'll know. If you haven't done it, you need to do it. The views are a 5 out of 5, and that is the reason that Liagach is my favourite mountain in Scotland. So that is it. That is my top 5 list of the best mountains in Scotland, in my opinion. I've not done them all, and I'm really excited to do the ones I haven't done, particularly on the Isle of Skye, and heading back to Torridon to do Ben Alligin and Ben A. But in my opinion, Liagach is the best mountain in Scotland, closely followed by Anchellach. Let me know what your favourite mountain is. I'd be interested to see if we have similar tastes. But I'm going to head home now and rest up this leg, and I'll hopefully be back out in the mountains on a proper adventure next week. Right, I'll see you guys later.